Today's podcast is all about the power of resilience. We can overcome the effects of trauma, be it physical or emotional, if we put our minds to it and take support of the tools and resources that can help us in that journey. Our guest today met with a terrible accident at a young age, which left him with serious brain and physical injuries. He was in a coma, and when he finally came out of it, he couldn't walk or talk. He had to reinvent his life all over again. It wasn't an easy journey, but he didn't give up. Dr. Justin James Kennedy, fondly known as JJ, wears many hats today. He's a TEDx speaker, a behavioral neuroscience professor, an academic and executive coach, an organizational neuroscience expert, PhD supervisor, and an author. I hope you enjoy listening to his resilience story. Hi, JJ. Welcome. Welcome to Thriving Changes.
Thank you so much for having me, Reena.
Of course, it's my pleasure. I'm so grateful that you could take out the time and do this. I'm really looking forward for our listeners to hear your story. It is an absolutely phenomenal recovery story, and I'm very excited. So, yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do.
Okay, I'm a Swiss professor of organizational neuroscience here in Europe. I spend part of my time supervising PhD candidates. The rest of the time, I have a executive health coaching practice. I run the program in organizational neuroscience. I also consult to other universities. Also a co-founder of the Institute of Organizational Neuroscience, supporting those PhD candidates, which has also led to the development of the Neuroplasticity credential, which is a credential of evidence of your expertise in training and application of neuroscience. I also am a co-founder of the NPN Hub, where people like you and many other experts commune and collaborate around topics of interest. And it all started with my own experiences on the wrong side of neuroscience. That's where it all started, Reena.
I know you wear so many hats. I'm just amazed at how you do it. It's phenomenal. It's very inspiring, and especially knowing your backstory. So let's dive into that. I'm really keen to know. I know that you met with a terrible accident at a very young age, which affected much of your mental functioning. And so,
Hmm.
walk us through that.
So the story begins when I bought a motorbike, and it was near the end of the story as well, is that I ended up having a serious road accident which caused a subdural hemorrhage, which basically means a lot of bleeding on the brain after my skull was cracked open. And that led into a coma. And on the recovery and on the getting out of the coma, I couldn't walk or talk, or I just couldn't basically do anything. I was very incapacitated, very disabled. But I got back on my feet literally, and I got back into trying to just be functional again. And I was studying to be a psychologist before the accident. And I remember asking, my mind is curious to know why my brain isn't working. And the questions that came out of that was thinking, how can my mind work if my brain is damaged? And it was like, I didn't really ever think of that before. But obviously, then I started thinking, can you have a mind without a brain? And never thought about it before. And at the time, I thought, yeah, maybe you can, maybe you can't. But because I was so brain damaged, I thought you definitely can't. But then I thought, okay, let me like look into what happens in the brain. And I got involved in researching neuroplasticity and understanding how the brain can change and grow and recover. from trauma and took me down a rabbit hole that I'm still in, Reena. I'm still trying to make sense of neuroplasticity. It led me down the road to complete my doctoral studies in applied neuroscience, and I'm still on faculty after doing that research. And a lot of the research I've done is just like trying to understand my own brain, but it's led into many different caveats, many different corners, looking at what does the brain actually do to recover? What does the brain do to be more effective in controlling or finding ways to thrive, as this channel is all about thriving through changes? And thriving through my experience is a very good way of putting it, because the changes I experienced, they were very stressful, neurologically, emotionally, even socially. It was very difficult. I couldn't speak. It was terrible. And the thriving through these changes that I experienced, it took years of getting my brain to work again. I still sometimes miss a few words, and sometimes I might start breakdancing uncontrollably. But on a serious note, a couple of years ago, I've told you this, but a couple of years ago, I started having these epileptic seizures. I've been clear out of the woods with no side effects. Obviously, there were some, but not anything massive. I'd recovered pretty much 99%. But as I'm getting older now, some of the neurons and the scarring were obviously damaged, which caused me to have serious. I'm now on like medication for these seizures so that I can control these epileptic events. My thriving is being challenged by my aging. It's a whole new different kind of practices that I need to be in control of, as everybody does, as your body and your brain changes as you get older. So there you go. That's the short version of everything. Before I forget, I did write a book called Brain Reboot. And that book covers the story and also gives a lot of the tools that I used and also I use with my clients to help them to be effective and to thrive in their own ways, not only through brain damage, but just through stress or insomnia or migraines or relationship or emotional stresses. It's an interesting book. It was written about 5 years ago. And when you're in the science, you look and you say, oh, God, I can't believe I said that 5 years ago. Because the science is so quick. And in my work, I'm not trying to be at the cold face of the research. I consider myself a pra-academic rather than an academic, looking at professional and practical tools that help us thrive through change.
No, this is such an amazing story. And you said the book is called Brain Reboot.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. I hope anybody who's interested in learning more and digging really deep into it can. It's available on Amazon?
Yes, it is. In fact, you can even get a free copy if you join the NPN Hub. So tell people rather to join the NPN Hub, because you get the free copy of the book there if you want it. So the NPN Hub is really the most important part of my recovery, because it's all about social health. And in this weird world we've all of a sudden been thrown into, having the social connection is so important. And the community at the NPN Hub is really a place for people to connect and to learn and to discuss the science and share their own work. So it's been an incredibly interesting community. So I'm really glad you are part of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to take you back a little bit to your accident incident. And I do want to understand, how long were you in the coma?
I don't remember. Sure, I don't know. It was less than a month.
Okay. All right. What was your support system like?
It's an interesting question because it feels like so long ago. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, I was in my late 20s, early 30s at that time. So it is like 20 plus years ago. But my support system was my family, my friends. But it was very stressful on people. I mean, the girlfriend I had at the time, we were very close, and the trauma, the relationship couldn't survive through that. It was just too much on our relationship. And I was living at my own at the time, but obviously I couldn't live by myself. So it was very difficult socially at the time. The social dynamics in my life were very, very complicated. My mother was recently remarried to a great guy. He's still part of my life, but it was still awkward at that time. It was so weird. And then I stayed with my brother as well. There you go, onward and upward.
JJ, anytime you need a break or don't want to talk about certain something, just let me know. We have to
Okay.
be there. The first priority is that you should be comfortable and in sharing, and obviously what you're experiencing, because reliving it is stressful. But thank you for sharing. So, in your post recovery, when you said that you couldn't talk, you couldn't walk, you couldn't do anything, so what kind of therapies were you? I know that you were involved in that, you were doing a number of things from physical therapy to counseling and a bunch of other stuff. Could you just walk us through some of it and
Yeah,
what
I
it
mean,
was like?
I was doing physiotherapy and psychotherapy and pretty much every therapy I could think of. But what really helped me was the occupational therapy, which was so effective to get me to move in the world, to know how to function, like just like walking up steps and that kind of thing. Yeah, that was very useful. But before that happened, I was part of a research team in New York developing some technology that improved heart rate variability. And breathing and meditation were also very useful activities. And mindfulness was just becoming popular as a word and a practice back then. So that was also very valuable just to calm me down when I felt out of control and I felt emotionally. Because a lot of the stuff was emotional. I would get angry and I'd be crying in the same sentence. It was all over the place. It was a jungle in my mind.
I can't even imagine because I don't know. I've never been in a situation like that. I think, and even if someone has, the journey is different for everybody. So we can never truly know what the other person has gone through. It all sounds like it was just too much going on in your life. As you said, it was a jungle up there, physically, mentally, emotionally, being on your own, a broken relationship, the limitations that you were dealing with. How did you get through a day? What kept you going?
I've had other stressful periods in my life,
Mhm.
as everybody has. And it's interesting to notice that the things that help me thrive in just general life stress and jobs and relationships. I went through a divorce, which felt even more traumatic than recovering from a coma. All these things, the brain kind of processes pain as pain. It doesn't say pain in relationships or pain from a coma or pain from a job loss. It just says pain is pain. Whatever you're going to do, it's okay as long as it works. And as long as it works, it sounds so weird and so random. But if you notice and you take a moment to actually think, what makes me feel better? And noticing what is the difference between emotions and feelings are so useful to actually decide what is helping you be more in control. I think it all comes down to emotional control if you're going to be coping and just finding that sense of resilience to traumatic or even just social or professional demands, Reena.
Yeah. You said something very interesting, the difference between emotions and feelings. So, could you just elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, sure. When I say that, I like to ask. So
Hmm.
I'll ask you as well. So, Reena, in your opinion, what is the difference between emotion and feelings, in your opinion?
So, emotion would be something like anger, but it's the larger energy that one experiences. Feeling could be the result of that emotion.
Yeah, exactly. You've got it in a very similar way that I understand it. Emotions are things that happen to us. Sadness, anger, disgust. And then how I feel about them is the consequence of that initial emotion. So, different theorists have categorized emotions into different spaces, but I understand it as there are this core hub of half a dozen emotions like sadness and joy, disgust. And then there are this rainbow of so many different ways that you can feel about that experience of these emotions happening to you. So you and me have a very similar definition for sure.
So, what did you do with it? Like when you differentiated your emotion and your feeling, what did you do differently?
I don't really know. I can't really remember that far back. But at the moment, what I find useful, and I use this in all of my work as well, is paying attention to that emotion and then labeling it. So building an emotional awareness and then looking at how you can regulate how you feel. Because you can't really control emotion. They happen even before conscious thought comes on to the stage. So it's about building that awareness and then seeing how you can regulate the feelings that follow.
No, that makes sense. And I think it's important the minute we get connected, because we are emotional beings. Everything that we
Yeah.
do is based on our emotions. And we are going to experience emotion in always throughout our life. And it
Hmm.
might change day to day what that emotion looks like. So it's important to understand and then, as you say, regulate. So that's a great way of managing our mental well-being. And I think that has such a great impact on our professional life as well.
Totally.
Yeah. This incident, when you went through it, what did you learn about yourself?
It kind of was like a rebirth because of what I was doing before that time. Nothing continued the same. Like it was basically nothing that I was doing before continued. Work I was doing, the studies that I was doing, the relationships that I had, and it all just changed. It didn't influence me. It completely reinvented me.
How did the people around you, like your parents, your brother, how did they deal with it? That as you were becoming this new.
Everybody was very nice and very understanding. People forget, or people don't even notice, or not even become aware that it's traumatic. It's often even more traumatic for the people that love you than it is for you. Like I've been recently having these seizures that I mentioned. Not many of them, but still more than one as a pattern. And it's so traumatic for my wife. If you're having a seizure, you don't really know what's going on. But the people around you, they become terrified. They don't know what you're doing. The people around you suffer because they don't feel that they can do much. It's very difficult for them.
Yeah, absolutely. How did your mental and emotional state change over time?
As I was saying, I just changed completely, but in the same way, it's stayed the same. I got new interests in neuroscience, so that changed me quite a lot. I was very much a vegan hippie before the accident, and the neurosurgeon said to me after I came out of the coma, he said, "What do you normally eat?" And I was saying, "Oh, blah blah, I'm eating this, but the only thing that I eat with eyes are potatoes." And he said, "Well, that's about to change. Otherwise, I'm going to fire you as my patient. You need to eat red meat every day. Otherwise, your brain's not going to have enough protein to recover." So I'm now a carnivore, or at least an omnivore. So that changed a lot. Food is a big part of our lives, and my alcohol tolerance became very intolerant. So I very much limit alcohol to very little, if not anything, most of the time. And my exercise routines changed as well because my body was quite damaged in the accident. So my one shoulder, I can't do many like racquetball sports, and my knee was damaged, so I can't really run anymore. I've always liked surfing, so I've got more into surfing and swimming. I love swimming as well. More of the exercises and the nutrition and the way I spend my day has changed a lot.
So, did you also take support of counseling and therapy to regulate your emotions?
I went through two periods of therapy. One was like just basically helping make sense of my new brain after the coma, which was very medical. I can't remember anything of it.
Mm.
And then a couple of years later, maybe 10 years afterwards, no, but less than 10, more than five, I went through a couple of years of psychoanalysis. And I can safely say it was an absolute waste of money going through psychoanalysis. No, I wouldn't say that. It's really challenging to understand how you got here and what are the choices I made that led me to that. So it was a really interesting analysis, literally, of consequences, of decisions, of the way that my cognitive processes work. So, yeah, that was really eye opening.
Why do you call it a waste of money or time?
Here I was teasing, I was
Okay.
making a joke because it was very expensive. You spend like years in psychoanalysis and it's a real investment. But psychoanalysis is very different. I think people should know this. The psychoanalytic protocols are very different to what people often think of therapy today, which is mainly CBT or maybe counseling. Commitment to analysis is for people who are really prepared to look at the dark side.
Had you already done your PhD prior to the accident, or
The PhD was, and I had to stop studying obviously when I had the accident. I couldn't do anything for a few years, and then I can't remember how many years later I got back into it because I was so interested to research what's going on in the brain at an executive level of my executive clients because I was still working as a coach like 5 years later. And I thought, the executive function of the executive brain to build resilience, that they know how to thrive and they know what to do to flourish. So there's a lot of health coaching, and that was the basis of the research.
okay. So, how do you look back at it all?
I look back, obviously I don't deny it, but there's not much point in looking into the past. There's much more fun stuff going on in the future.
You're my kind of a guy. I can't live in the past. I like to look into the future. So,
Good for you.
yeah. So, you married again, and
Hmm.
how did you guys
Yeah.
meet?
We bumped into each other on the beach. It was as random as that.
Nice. Yeah. How long
Yeah.
have you been married now?
I should know this off by heart. It's 9 years coming up.
I know that you said I don't like to look back, but would you have done anything differently?
I don't know if one can. Would I have bought the motorbike? Would I have, had relationships? Would I have made provisions? I don't know. I don't think so. But I mean, at a philosophical level, it's a quite interesting question to explore because I've really found my calling. I've really found work that doesn't feel like work. The things that I do today, I really enjoy. If I have to take a weekend and I can't do work, I feel a bit upset. I would like to go and just check on things. So yeah, it doesn't feel like work. I really have found an area that I really work, and a lot of that's down to my wife. She's built such a brilliant system around the work at the NPN hub, and I suppose that's a lot about the social connection, which is so important.
Yeah. So, what's next for you? I know you want to talk about the future. You're already doing something so much. Anything new in the horizon?
So the next phase in the work that we're doing is to expand the community. We've shown the MVP, the minimum viable product. The neuroplastician credential is going to. So it's just basically now getting the word out on something that everybody seems to get a lot of benefit out of.
Nice. All right. What would you say to somebody who's navigating a health crisis and feeling hopeless?
Oh, sure. As I say, anything that makes you feel better, so that you can say you can repeat. Anything you can do makes you feel better, like pizza. If pizza makes you feel better, eat pizza. But obviously, after a while, you're going to get fat, so you're not going to feel so good by having too much pizza. So finding things that give you a sense of awe, AWE, seem to have the most power. When you feel humbled in the presence of nature, of God, of the universe, your ego kind of dilutes and you just feel connected. So I really get that when I go swimming in the ocean. You just feel lost in nature, and that's really a good way. So go into nature and try not burn things down, have a barbecue and enjoy yourself. I think that's it, Reena.
Yeah, I think that's a very valuable advice because when there's
Yeah.
so much going on, it's so important to just get connected and enjoy something that brings you.
You, social connection is very important. Being around people that you like, not that you necessarily related to. Maybe they're the same person, which is ideal. And having a felt sense of connection to whatever it is that you do, from exercising to music to whatever it might be.
Yeah, this is, I think, such a valuable conversation because the couple of things that I've learned from this conversation. One is, of course, that no matter how difficult the trauma that we go through physically, emotionally, we can rebuild ourselves. We can come up. Also, I'm walking away with you did everything that you could get your hands on that would help you in recovery. And you explored
Mm.
all avenues, you didn't leave anything out. So, because something might have worked, something might not have worked, but it's good to at least explore and see what's out there. And the third thing that I think touched my heart was that you're doing something that you're really passionate about. And that I think is the key to living a fulfilled life. Because then work doesn't feel like work because you're enjoying it so much that it's just such a joy to go back to it. What you are doing now, is this after your accident that you discovered your passion, or were you already doing something in this field before?
I wasn't familiar with neuroscience before, and I was studying psychology, so it's pretty related, especially through the lens of coaching. But these questions have been really interesting, and we haven't had a chance to dive that I've developed around what builds well-being so a person can thrive, and looking at all the other tools from sleeping to nutrition to emotion. So we should definitely have these further discussions. We know there's so much I'd love to talk with you about. The thriving changes model is so close to my heart and my head. I'd
We'll
love to,
definitely, yeah. I
yeah,
love to
thank
have another
you.
conversation with you and just dig deep into each of these aspects.
Let's
Uh,
do that.
yeah. So I would love to have you back. So thank you,
Thank
JJ.
you.
Thank you for your time. Very interesting just to get to know your story and learn about different kind of resources and very inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you. And your channel, your podcast is really awesome. So keep it up. It's really exciting, the work that you're doing. And thank you for the opportunity.
Of course, I love being part of NPF. It's like a mutual admiration society here. Love that. You're doing some great work, JJ. I
Thank you,
truly
Reena.
admire that. If you found the content valuable, please like, share, and subscribe and spread the word. I feel the best compliment is being referred, that one action of yours can help us reach more people and fulfill the mission of thriving changes. Thank you for considering.